I recently built an AI chatbot for a business, and I'll tell you about how this actually impacted the business. But what was so shocking to me is how relatively simple this was to set up. And it's not something that's super technically complicated. We're going to do this in n8n. I'm going to walk you through each step of it. But if you just think about the purpose and the utility of an AI chatbot, usually if someone leaves an inquiry on a website at 9 p.m., they probably don't get a reply for another 10 hours if they're lucky. With an AI chatbot, you can have basically human level communication instantaneously. This goes for sales reps, customer service. AI chatbots are very, very effective and are one of the highest leverage things to add into a business or into your regular life just in terms of AI. Now, the problem is AI tends to hallucinate. So it's really bad if you have a customer ask a question and the AI chatbot essentially spits out some BS answer or something that is not relevant. So in this video, I'm also going to show you how to make sure that never happens. And this was the big concern of the customer we were working with at the time, but we were able to show him exactly how we circumvent that through the use of technology. So first things first, there's a couple things that you need to really understand if you're going to be adding a chatbot into your business or you're going to be building one and selling one to a customer. So you need to understand what RAG is. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's a fancy way of saying going and finding information from documents that you have uploaded very quickly. Okay, so basically it's an AI architecture that combines two components. Step one is, just like we said, retrieval. So the system searches a knowledge base. This is what makes it different than just adding ChatGPT to your website. ChatGPT or any of these LLMs are trained on a wide range of data. And it's not super specific, but it's super wide. So that's why, you can go to ChatGPT and learn a lot about a lot. But if you really want to get specific about a certain piece of information, sometimes it leaves much to be desired. And this is the solution to that. So you are uploading databases, documents, all of this information to a vector database. I'm not going to get too in the weeds to what a vector database is in this video, but essentially it is a database that AI uses a specific language to quickly identify the answer to whatever query you're uploading into the chatbot and asking. So essentially, the retrieval part of RAG is going to pull the most relevant external information based on my query. So maybe I go to a website, let's just use Google for an example, and let's say I'm having an issue with Gemini, or let's use ChatGPT. Let's just say for a minute that OpenAI has a customer support system, which they don't, and you go to their website and ask a question about ChatGPT. Hey, why is my ChatGPT doing this? Well, the old way would be a customer service rep. I'd get a message, say, hey, we'll be right with you. And in about an hour, someone will respond to me. The new way is the retrieval system. It immediately indexes all of OpenAI's documentation. And it comes back to me with saying, oh, well, you're doing this when you should be doing that. And that's the breakdown. That's why you're having this issue. So that's where the generation comes in. So essentially, a large language model, an LLM, uses that retrieved context along with the user's query to generate a response. So all these things come together. And the reason that this is critical is really for accuracy. So RAG reduces hallucinations because the model is grounded its outputs in real data. So it's not referencing a bunch of broad data and kind of assuming and inferring and then just spitting out an answer that may or may not be correct. It's actually going to be grounded in the documentation that you provide it. And so instead of retraining the model with every knowledge update, all you have to do is update your knowledge base. And basically, these retrieved documents can be shown as sources. So when the chatbot answers the question, it's going to be sourced with the grounded data that I can click in and I can look at the official documentation. So without RAG, an LLM is going to, like I just said, it might invent an answer about your company's policies. But with RAG, the system retrieves your company's actual policy document and it uses it to generate a precise source answer. So you can probably tell right off the bat why this is a better option. It's just because it's going to be much more accurate. And as a company, you can't afford to have non-accurate inputs or outputs. So let's go ahead and start talking about the actual build and what it looks like. So we're going to be using n8n, like I said. And so this is what the workflow looks like at a high level. So you can think about Google Drive as essentially the database where you're storing the documentation and you're storing the information. So a Google Drive file, in the way this workflow would work is like this. So this is part 1 of 2 of the entire flow. A Google Drive file is created or a Google Drive file is uploaded. And so what happens is the file is downloaded from Google Drive. and it's connected to Pinecone, which Pinecone is essentially a vector database. It's very affordable, very cheap, and it allows you to use the power of vector databases without spending $1 billion. So you basically are importing the Google Drive files into the Pinecone vector store. And what this is doing is it is also connected to Google Vertex, which we'll talk about in a minute and what that actually is. And it also is connected to the default data loader. And so you see this 01 and 10. Well, the way that AI works is essentially it's digits. It's 01 and 1 zeros. And when you put in a query, it is going to go find the answer by indexing the 01s and 1 zeros. It's very strange, kind of complicated, kind of confusing, but that's how it works, okay? So from there, we're also going to have our recursive character text splitter. Now, I thought that this might, throw some people off and kind of intimidate them. So I wanted to break down what a recursive character splitter is. And essentially, let me make sure you can see my screen. A recursive character splitter is a text processing method which is used in natural language processing, which is essentially being able to talk to AI with natural English language. Or a vector database, indexing to break large chunks of text into smaller manageable pieces for analysis, embedding, or retrieval. So basically what it's doing is it's making it much easier for the data to be loaded and identified, because this has to happen quickly. Remember, it's kind of a miracle that you can ask such a complex question and get such a quick reply. So this is basically helping to identify the data much quicker. And just kind of in layman's how it works. So recursive splitting means the text is broken down step by step using progressively smaller separators. First, split on large boundaries, which could be chapters, sections, sales, marketing, like different departments, etc. And if the piece is still too large, it's going to split it again on smaller boundaries. So maybe paragraphs, maybe keywords. And it just continues to split it down further and further. As a last resort, it splits by characters. So this ensures that chunks are as large as possible while staying under a specified limit, which is critical for tasks like sending text into an LLM context window. Without going on too much of a tangent, context windows are one of the main things that hold LLMs and AI back. Because what happens is if you've ever had a long conversation with an LLM, what you'll notice is the deeper in the conversation you get, the more the conversation breaks down. It starts hallucinating, it starts forgetting things, and that's because it has a very specific context window that it cannot remember things outside of that context window. And every character adds up to create that context window. So if you have documents, you have questions, you have output from the model, input from yourself, it's a lot of context that has to be considered. So in the future, one day, we will have probably unlimited context windows, which is going to completely change the way that we use AI. But for the time being and for a while, it's probably going to be this way. So it's important to understand. Okay, so this first part of the flow, what we're essentially looking at is just the data, where it's getting stored and how it's getting indexed. So you have your database in Google Drive. Every time you create a new file or you update a file, it essentially gets placed into this Pinecone vector database, okay? And then from there, you're going to use the recursive character splitter, and it's going to identify the information quickly, and then it's going to embed it and feed it to Google's Gemini, which is where this takes us to the next step that we have. I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen there, but this is what it was looking like, and let me just run that back. So going back to this, it's very simple. Hopefully this makes sense to you at this point. We have Google Drive, which is essentially the database. Anytime we create a new Google Drive file, or we upload or we update a file in Google Drive, it is sent to the Google Drive that is connected to the Pinecone database, okay? So it's essentially just, instead of uploading a ton of information, it's all stored on the drive. And then from there, it's sent to our default data loader, and it uses the recursive character text splitter to quickly index the relevant information, because you might have terabytes of data in there. I mean, you might have literally hundreds of terabytes of data. So it's going to quickly find that information using this technology, and then it's going to send it to Gemini, which is the LLM for Google. And that's going to take us to the next part, where you can chat with company documents. So for example, when a chat message is received, we have this AI agent that starts to take action. And it's really interesting, okay? So this AI agent starts to take action. We have Google Gemini, the chat model, which remember is receiving the information in real time from the Pinecone vector database. And we also have our window buffer memory, the amount of context that we have available. And then from there, what's happening is it's basically working through this vector tool that has all the data, and it is sending it to Gemini in real time so that it can give you an answer. So a lot of times when an LLM is thinking, usually what it's doing is it's referencing data to understand how to best answer your question. And so it's really straightforward, to be honest with you. So a chat message is received. The Pinecone database is basically pinged, essentially, and it's referencing all the data that's been uploaded from Google Drive. And from there, it is sending it using recursive text splitting into Gemini. And so essentially what it looks like on the outside is, hey, I'm just chatting with a customer service rep. But what you're really doing is you're chatting with Gemini, Google's LLM. And this could be any LLM, just to be clear. What you're not seeing is what's going on behind the scenes, which is the Pinecone vector retrieval, which is the window memory buffer, which is the actual Pinecone storage, which is the Google Drive storage. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, but this is quite literally all you have to do. I say all like it's easy. It's certainly not easy, but it's also not overly complicated. Every single business in 2025, in my opinion, should have some sort of chatbot. Why would you not have a chatbot? It can help you with sales, it can help you with customer service, and it's relatively simple to create. This is the exact infrastructure you need. So if you need to pause this video to look at this, feel free, but you can set this up in n8n relatively quickly. And all you got to do is just bring over your secret keys and your APIs to connect this, and you're off to the races with your chatbot. So this is really what an effective chatbot looks like, especially if you're using a tool like n8n. And I find this to be an incredible value enhancer for a business. It might replace a customer service team. It might lower your response rates in terms of how long it takes to respond, which can increase your conversion rates. All in all, it is a no-brainer to create a chatbot for your business. And I highly recommend everyone watching this video to go and create your first AI chatbot or work with me and I'll build it for you.